hip internal rotation isometric hold in a neutral hip rotation position. So we're going to be doing this for improved connective tissue architecture and reactive strength. So hip internal rotation is the same lying on my back. We're going to go that way. So this would be at the end of my internal rotation. Neutral, please excuse my foot, bottom of my foot. Neutral is obviously here. Internal, so this is a neutral position. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be preventing the band pulling us there, holding us in neutral. I'll show you from the other side so you can see my bald head instead of the bottom of my foot. But basically all we're going to do is got a band here, obviously, and we are going to be getting into this position up in about 90 degrees of hip flexion. And I want to hold this now in this neutral position, and I'm just going to do this for 2 minutes. It is literally this simple. However, it might be simple, but it's definitely not easy. This is not a lot of resistance. The first 5 seconds of this, I could hardly feel it. It's already starting to build up. We're going to be wanting to accumulate 2 minutes worth of load here. The other problem you're going to find with this is your hip flexor here will probably fatigue. We don't want the hip flexors to fatigue. I don't mind working our hip flexors, obviously, that's a good thing, but I don't want that to be the limiting factor. What we're trying to do is we're getting all of the tissue that stops the rotation. We want that to be stiffening, to be absorbing this force, and we're teaching this tissue how to stiffen, how to have better reactive strength in this position. So we want that to be the limiting factor. So all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap my hands, just going to interlace my fingers around behind my leg, just to hold my leg up leg up. What I do not want though, while I do this, is to put a lot of force here with my hands. If I'm just holding my leg pretty tightly, well now I'm not really doing much against the band here. So I just want to hold my leg just with as much force as I need to, as little force as I need to, just to sort of give that hip flexor a rest, but with only enough force so that my leg is still working to hold against the band. And you're just going to sit here. So this is a neutral position, and you're going to feel this tissue start to stiffen, it'll start to fatigue. Now you're going to want to do this, I'm going to drop this down, you're going to want to do this for 2 minutes. Obviously a program will say so. You're probably just going to be doing this at like 20 or 30% intensities. But what you'll also find is that you probably won't be able to do it for 2 minutes. So we're just going to accumulate it. So that might mean that you do it for 20 seconds, have a rest, do another 20 seconds. Then as you go through the program, your objective is to get up to 2 minutes in one go, but almost. Now, as you progress through your program, we might give you what's called a dynamic isometric, which seems like a bit of an oxymoron, because dynamic means moving and isometric means not moving. So what that would mean is, I'll just move back so I'm more in line here. I'm going to hold this position of natural rotation, or sorry, neutral rotation, as I then move through the position. So it's forcing this tissue to work in different ranges. What will more than likely happen in your program is you'll just start in this position, and then as you progress, we'll say sort of 40 seconds here, 40 seconds there, 40 seconds here. You might even do a like a half kneeling position, and then we might progress to a point where you're actually working through the movement for the whole 2 minutes. But that's it. That's your hip internal rotation. Isometric hold in the neutral position. Enjoy. Actually, one more thing that I will show. I've obviously shown this to you on your back. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. It might be uncomfortable for those hip flexors for some reason. So you can do exactly the same thing in sort of a half kneeling or a quadruped position. So I'm going to pretend that this is tied up to the bottom here, and I'll obviously show with my other leg now. So basically we're exactly the same thing here. So I'm just in this neutral position now here. So I can either do it in this quadruped like this, so I've got my hands and knees there and I'm just holding still, or I can also do this in a half kneeling position. You're going to want to do something here with sort of balance. And now I'm obviously in hip extension. So there's a couple of different options there for you from a setup perspective. And just find whichever one is probably the most comfortable for you to start with and go with that. Enjoy.